our project managers, which I think are second to none. I've never seen better project managers anywhere. What they do on a daily basis baffles me.
Welcome to the Let's Talk Business podcast, a project of the PTEX Group. Gain valuable, actionable ideas from the world's top business leaders to help you take the next step in your business journey. And now, here is your host, Manny Hoffman.
Coming to you from the PTEX headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. This is the podcast for no-nonsense advice to help you learn, grow, and lead. Today, I'm so excited to welcome our guest, my good friend, Dobbin Buck. Dobbin is the co-owner and Chief Revenue Officer at Getwired. Getwired is an award-winning full-service digital marketing agency with close to 50 full-time team members located in North Georgia. Dobbin frequently shares his knowledge of business scalability, cultural development, operational efficiencies, business development, and profitability when the ecosystem Getwired supports and endorses. In our conversation, Dobbin shares his extraordinary journey from military service to marketing mastery. He also reveals how his diverse background, including his time in the U.S. Army and building museums, exhibits, shaped his leadership approach. He emphasized the necessity of a clear agenda and competitive team, and providing a gripped account of empowering middle management to foster innovation and growth. He also discusses the balance between humility and accountability, comparing those values with effective leadership practices. Without further ado, here is my interview with Dobbin Buck. Dobbin Buck, thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Talk Business podcast.
Thank you, Manny. Couldn't think of anywhere I'd rather be today.
Yeah, you see, you're so nice. You know, you start off your day with the positivity, and this is the man I always known. Okay, so our relationship go back many years. We both were partners with a company called Infusionsoft, now a company called Keep. Obviously, we'll get into some of the automation and where the company has been going and the whole industry has been going throughout the years. But I think we started off way back when automation wasn't even a space. But for our listeners, we'll talk about automation, but we had other guests speak about automation as well. The reason why I have you on the show, because you have built a nice size agency. We've done some creative stuff. So I would want to speak about your leadership style and the growth, mechanism that you've been working, culture, and so on and so forth. So for our listeners, give them just the bird's eye view as far as what you did before Getwired and ultimately what Getwired is all about.
So before Getwired, my really two careers, I would say, maybe not careers, but I was a soldier in the U.S. Army for a period. Then I went to college. I was 4 years in the U.S. Army. I went to college. And then out of college, I got into the museum trade. So I built museums for nearly a decade, leading up to right around the year 2000. And so a lot of different projects around the world. And by building museums, what I mean is all of the theming and interiors and exhibitry and the things inside of a museum. So I worked for an exhibit house that specialized in attractions and museums for many years. And with 9/11 happening, a lot of the money seized up in museums and corporate sponsors and different things like that. So I had to make a shift. And in the period of that shift, I slowly found myself moving through several different jobs, but then finally into the world of marketing, because I had been really deep in understanding early on web development for museums, for attracting people to them, and had contracted a lot of that type of work. So when I came into the marketing industry, I had a lot of skills and understanding coming into it early on that led to me being able to get in and play a role in a full service marketing agency. And early on, Getwired, which is the name of my company, I was really focused on website design and SEO conversion and things like that. And then slowly over the years, we got into marketing automation and a lot of advanced marketing principles that we are stewards of today. But Getwired started out as a five-person team. As a matter of fact, Getwired turned 22 years old as of April. So officially it's 22 years old. Started out as a five-person team. Now we have a 40-some-odd person team. I'm not exactly sure specifically how many team members we have, but it's 40-some team members. And it's really been a interesting journey, and I've got to meet a lot of amazing people like yourself, and I think that's been one of the greatest gifts of this journey is the company I keep and the really cool people that I'm able to meet when I'm traveling and doing business with and all of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I want to dive into some fundamentals because I paid attention, probably our listeners as well. You have an agency, you have a company, and you dabbled and you had to think twice to see how many employees do we currently have, which must be something that you have, set up a system in growth as far as other people that are running day-to-day operations. Let me ask you a very fundamental question, especially in the agency, and this is something people wrestle a lot with because in the creative agency, you're working with creative people. Creative people are sometimes not a typical assembly line where you could say, this is a warehouse, this is how you got to take off the boxes, pick and pack, and get it into a truck or whatever it is. These are people that are using their brains most of the day. How is leadership different? How much had you had to learn leadership, how to deal with the creative industry?
Wow, that's a deep question, Manny. I'm still learning. And it's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. And what creative, thoughtful, and talented individuals want in a relationship is constantly shifting and evolving with the time. Over the last couple decades, it's a lot different with hiring, training, supporting, and motivating team members than it was early on. So I would say the big change that has come is as an owner, as a leader in a company, is training up middle management to become optimizers. So there's this thought process with business owners that this company is going to go nowhere unless I do it, unless I have the vision, unless I come up with the answers, unless I move this train forward. And when I look back in time, I know that my current team members know more about agency and know more about how to successfully serve our clients than I did 10, 15 years ago. They're way more advanced than I used to be while I owned and ran the company. So it would only make sense that these same people should be charged with moving the company forward and optimizing it. I want to play a role in that, of course. The leadership team wants to play a role in it, but we've called upon our middle management, our upper leadership, project managers, different people within the company to improve the company and bring their creativity to it. So ownership and a deeper understanding of what it takes to keep the company operational, both creatively and financially, has, I think, been a real motivator for people, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we all want to be, to some degree, in charge of ourselves and in charge of our destiny. And when we allow people that sort of freedom or that sort of responsibility, they feel as though, and they truly do have, a better hand in the future of the company that they've aligned themselves with, and the safety of their families, and the reasons why they're working in the first place.
That's a great answer. Let me ask you a follow-up question, is because you mentioned in the answer giving people the autonomy to be able to be part of the building process, not just the followers, but also being part of the suggestions and coming up with the ideas and how to move the business forward. We hear a lot of times from leaders is that sometimes my vision gets diluted, or all of a sudden I turn myself around. It's not a company that I actually wanted to build because other people are just taking it to what they feel is the destiny of the business and so on and so forth. How do you make sure that there's synchronization between you as a leader and the middle management to make sure that you're constantly in sync of how the company needs to operate internally and externally?
Well, it's a regular cadence of communication and feedback loop and approval processes from the leadership team. So we have regular meetings scheduled to where we're going over our profitability, our gross revenue, all the financial numbers. And in those periods, we're talking about potential ways to optimize our operational or creative processes. All of it winds up coming back to a benefit of higher profitability, because the more efficient you are in any aspect of a company, ideally you're going to see that in the numbers. So we just communicate at a high level on a weekly basis. Some things are going on a daily basis with our teams, and it's really worked out. Over the last several years, it's been a priority for the owners and leadership team of our company to instill this in our leaders that are just beneath us on the org chart. And we've been rewarded in so many ways. It's just been amazing.
I like what you said before, and I want to know if this is a deliberate word that you're using. You mentioned that the middle management is that they are optimizers. Is this a word that you actually use internally just to keep them the mindset of your job is to constantly optimize?
It is the word that I use constantly. As a matter of fact, I'm sure people are tired of hearing it. I use it so much. But that's what it is. It's constantly optimizing. We're always moving forward. And there are practices of optimization that go from ownership all the way through the company to coders or copywriters or any of the variety of skill sets. It goes all the way through the company, and there's optimization being done on a singular human basis, on a team basis, on a channel basis, and on a company basis.
I want to ask you a personal question, though. You're a very humble guy. Every time I met with you, very humble, willing to share. What I hear a lot of leaders wrestling with is, I'm too humble to be strict in my business. I'm too humble to hold people accountable. And they feel that humbleness as a leader is sometimes a sign of weakness. They cannot get their way with their teams. I know you have a very solid team and you work very strong with your team. How do you overcome making sure that, yes, I'm a humble leader, yet there's the non-negotiables?
So with humility, what it suggests is that I don't have all the answers all the time. I may have some answers, but I don't have all the answers. And I rely on other people to see the mission through. And believe me, I do. The aspect of everything not going loosey-goosey and being ineffective is that we have very specific metrics and goals in place that the team is acutely aware of. So as a leadership team and on down, people are held accountable for very specific goals on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. And that is clearly documented and spoke of. So as long as those things, those items are being honored, then all the space between those is creativity and optimization. And those items that we're holding people accountable, they inevitably evolve over the course of the year. They're changing, but not abruptly. They're changing in a logical manner. But we have great clarity around our expectations, and we take that very seriously. And if someone is not living up to one of those expectations, let's say it might be gross revenue coming into a certain channel. We know what our profitability is, so that's important, but we know that we need a certain amount of gross revenue in there. So it may be a sales situation that we're looking at. It may be a cycling work type of situation to where we're not moving the clients through the process quick enough to have effective recurring billing, that sort of thing. So instead of saying, oh, you didn't do this right, or, oh, you're failing in your mission, it's how can we get in there, lock arms to straighten this out? Now, fortunately, it isn't big differences that we're having to go through. It's very fine valleys that we're seeing this go down because we're paying attention to things at such a cadence that we can start to see something slide, and we pay close attention to our data, our overall employee efficiencies down to individual employees, all sorts of things that we're looking at. So not a lot slips by us to where we get into emergency mode in regards to this stuff. So in answer to your question, people know what they have to do, and I haven't had to get aggravated or, get really deeply frustrated, because generally the people that are charged with such things are already way ahead of me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they say that, once upon a time, a CEO of a company knew everything, every part of the company, that if they would be locked in a room, they could do themselves. Today, with, we involved so much the last 10, 15 years, speak to a CEO without, let's say, speak about IT or cybersecurity. They might have a Fortune 50 company, a Fortune 500 company. They might make it a millions of dollar decision on cybersecurity, but they don't know it. They've not gone through the ropes. This, and same as now with automation or the creativity. As you mentioned, this, the market is going so fast, so many creative ideas and stuff, that sometimes the CEO has to believe in their people and in some of the information that they share and they come up with.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And I'll be the first person to say that I understand at a high level, and I'm very comfortable with that, what's going on in the company. I'm very comfortable with my understanding of the marketing and the technologies that we use. But once you get into the nitty gritty of it, I fall out. Like I don't have a technical understanding of everything that we do. And then as an example, our project managers, which I think are second to none. I've never seen better project managers anywhere. What they do on a daily basis baffles me. I could never do. I'm not built to be able to do what they do effectively. I would be a basket case. They handle so much work, so many people, do it effectively, and give the people that they're charged with, our employees, a great feeling of being supported. And then likewise, on the other side of the spectrum, give our client base that same great feeling that they have a true partner that cares about them. They're right on that fulcrum of those two worlds, and they do it so effectively. I'm just amazed daily at what they're able to do.
Wow. I know Getwired has been earned multiple awards related to culture, company culture. I think you were awarded fourth best company to work in Georgia, and other awards. I know that this is, from the conversations we had in the past, that this was a priority for the company from the get-go. I know it's, Getwired is known for the cabin, even the office space. I guess my question to you is, how important is culture to you? And the follow-up question to that would be that, especially now when, the economy is not at its peak, and you see a lot of companies having to shuffle their budgeting from one thing to the other. And you could see a lot of companies cutting down on stuff that are, let's call it, fall into the bucket of culture, because they don't see a clear ROI on, okay, those activities or those incentives or whatever it is. What can you share how important culture is to you, and how much do you contribute the success of Getwired to the culture you've been able to build?
Great questions. Culture is extremely important to Getwired. And I really think it early on was maybe going back 12, 13 years when we really started focusing on our culture has been one of the things that has drawn people to us. You mentioned the cabin. During COVID, everybody started working from home. And when we passed through COVID, nobody wanted to come back.
Even to the cabin?
Even to the cabin. Because some people are driving an hour, some people a half an hour each way, they have families, all that sort of thing. And so we wound up turning the cabin into an Airbnb, so it sleeps up to 20 people, and we keep it rented out all the time. Like, it's been a great investment for us to turn the cabin into a vacation rental for small events, small groups, family reunions, weddings, that sort of thing. And then if we want to use the cabin for one of our own events, it's there for us. We can block out the time, but we aren't working out of the cabin anymore.
Now it's all remote? All remote?
It's all remote. And that poses its own cultural issues, because we used to be all together and we were seeing each other every day and closely knit physically. And so we've really had to up our game around how individual teams work and work amongst themselves and communicate with themselves to replace that connectivity. So the morning meetings and mentorship programs and different things we have within the company gives that human connection. And we still get together in person, quarterly team building events. We're getting ready to have another one on August 23rd. We're going to a camp up in the woods, and we're going to be doing all sorts of team building events that a company that we hired has figured out for us. And then we're breaking into teams and doing some sort of geocaching, finding hidden treasures in the woods and things like that. So we're doing that on a quarterly basis. We have our annual December holiday party that we have. And then we have some optional get-togethers that occur throughout the year. So we really pay close attention to that. But when people think about culture, they're thinking about, maybe, I don't mean to generalize, but the ping pong table in the room, or, some sort of cool, the fireman's pole that goes from the second story down to the first story of a place, or all the cool stuff like Google or Apple, has in their facilities. But what I've come to learn about culture is that it's not really about all the little fun little extras that a company throws in there. It's really about the depth of the relationship in the teams. And I spoke at an event a few months ago, and I have a part of my slide deck is about Elizabeth's recipes for successful team management. Elizabeth is my wife. She's the COO of the company. And I had finished this deck, and I asked her a few questions, and she started rambling off all these things she does to instill culture across the agency pods, the teams. We have project managers, developers, and creatives, each dedicated under different project managers in our agency. And she started unleashing this like bountiful wisdom that I was only partially aware of. And so I just copied her and added it to my deck. And it's really about leave no person behind. When one person has a problem, we all have a problem. We stop what we're doing, we rally around them, and we don't let them go into that deep, dark, lonely place that says, you know, I'm in big trouble here and I'm alone. Nobody feels alone. We work together, we instill that, and when we make mistakes as individuals or as teams, we break down those failures, mistakes, things that might be construed as a error, and we understand it and we improve on it. And I would say that it's our failures, our small failures throughout the years that have allowed us to learn and to grow into what we are today. John Maxwell talks a lot about failing forward and has that broken down as far as one would want to go into that. But I completely agree with it. And so when you have a team and a culture that doesn't lay blame on individuals when they're falling short, but rallies around them and then looks at those as an opportunity to improve, you've really got something. And that's back to optimization. When that's done on a hour-to-hour daily basis, it can change a company, and it keeps people engaged, and it keeps people feeling like they're part of something amazing.
This is very powerful. I want to go back to, because you mentioned, and this is something that I did not know, that you went fully remote. And this is something our own company has been wrestling, and I think there's hundreds of other companies that have been wrestling as well. You know, we are not remote, but we are like, there's a lot of employees that are hybrid since COVID. I always say that it's a totally different style of building a business, and culture has to be done totally differently if it's an in-person company or if it's a remote company. My question is, was that an easy transition for Getwired? Did you really focus on, okay, how are we going to replicate our existing culture and then come up with programs? Like, is that a ongoing challenge that the company is having, or you feel that you figured it out and at this point it's there?
Great question, because I had a lot of fear around it myself. We were previously, before COVID, we were doing some hybrid experimentation to where people would come in certain days of the week, and certain roles were remote. The creatives were allowed to stay home. So design and copywriting, they were allowed to work from home because they tend to work better in their own zone. They tend to be looser and more free and more creative for whatever reason. I can understand that. So we were already had systems in place to communicate and care for and make sure for employees and make sure that things were going well. So when we did wind up going fully remote, really all of the operational procedures were in place. The only thing that needed to be adjusted was how do we fill the void on the cultural end? And I've already described some of the things that we've done, but it has not been a difficult transition for us. As a matter of fact, I would say things are running more efficiently and effectively remotely than they were when we were all together in the headquarters, the cabin.
Tell me about that. Like, what are you using for the central hub for communication to make sure everybody's up to speed on everything?
Well, we're using Google Workspace for our internal communications. Everything is on Google now. And we have in the past used every different system that you could for internal systems. We were using Discord prior to going to Google, mainly because a lot of these systems you're paying per seat, and then when you get up to 40 some employees, it gets real expensive really quick. So we're a small business, but we have to be conscious of software costs and all of that sort of thing. So Discord was very inexpensive, and we figured out how to wire our company in that. I know a lot of teams use Slack, and there's a variety of different options. And we use Slack every day. Many of our clients communicate with us through Slack, so it's not like we're Slack free, but internally we're using Google all over the place. And our video meetings are through Google Meet, and we're having regular cadences of internal meetings with team members. So technology hasn't been difficult. As a matter of fact, technology is so much easier today than it ever was.
Sure.
It's really about mitigating cost and deciding, how much you want to spend here, how much you want to spend there. Same thing with culture. You mentioned earlier, a lot of companies are starting to slide on culture because of the inherent cost and how it impacts profitability, because ultimately, hey, you can just throw away culture and your profitability will shoot up by, 4 points or something, whatever you were originally putting into it. But the thing about it is cool cultural stuff like the events, the get-togethers. If you're creative, it doesn't have to be expensive. It just requires some thoughtfulness, some care, and taking the time to figure out, how to do things within an economy that will be meaningful for your people.
Yeah, just actually driving in today to the office, I listened to an episode on Starbucks, and Howard Schultz spoke about how much from the get-go they invested in their people and in different programs. And he said his average, their 2x employee retention versus the industry standard. So talk about people leaving earlier and retraining and so on and so forth, thinking about savings. If you're looking at from a P&L perspective, sometimes if you invest properly on the culture, ultimately you have people sticking around longer, liking it, referring other people to come join the company, and so on and so forth. I want to spend a couple of minutes, and I think this, I wouldn't do justice for my audience if I wouldn't, speaking on how you set up your agency, because one of the biggest challenges in creative agencies is the scalability part. And I know we have talked in person many times about it. You have a concept called the pods, and that's how you structure your clients. Could you share some of it publicly, like how the structure works in order to make sure that it's up for scale?
Sure, absolutely. With the pods or teams, what they are is really they're each their own individual agency. So they have everything that they need within them to be able to serve our customer base, whether they're influencers or enterprise level industry or whoever we happen to be working with at the time. Under each project manager, they have a team of coders and creatives and strategists and admin type implementation people that are able to serve those customers. So they work as individual teams, but they work closely together. It's a strange hybrid. They aren't like islands. We have 3 such pods right now, and the project managers work very closely together and communicate well with one another. And then we also share talent from one pod now to the other. So everything is timed on a availability, a whiteboard that's a piece of software that we developed for ourselves, to where we can see, who is dedicated to what project across the entire company. And so we're able to share and leverage talent across teams, but it's done in a very organized manner. Whereas early on, it was really, this is this pod, this is this pod, this is this pod, and they're sort of islands. We've really pulled them together, and I give credit to my wife, Elizabeth, and our senior project manager, Desiree, have gone to just a lot of effort to figure out the formula for that. It's been serving us well, but it is a great way to segment relationships and also team members, because we have, once again, culturally, we have morning team meetings. Each team, each channel has its own morning get-togethers to make sure they're starting off the day properly. And normally there's one big meeting during the week. Normally on Fridays, it's sort of a finish up the week, make sure everything is clear type of rhythm. So the pods have continued to be a thing, but they're a little bit more blended. And this goes back to the mystique of how they do things that I don't get. It works for them. It's organized, but that's the magic of what those project managers do.
Got it. So walk me through. So let's say a client inquires on the website about using Getwired for this, for a project or services, and then they will be assigned to a team based on the scope of work or based on availability. Like, what will be the first defining factor of which pod is getting that?
Interestingly enough, we have a specific team that now scopes. So when we're scoping projects, we get paid to scope projects. So we charge for scoping with the people that we're working with. And I would say in 90% of the cases, there are situations where I decide, let's just scope this out. But we go to great pains to clearly document and scope what we're getting into. We do that for two reasons. One, the clients can see that we put a great deal of intention, creativity, and effort in understanding what they want accomplished. Secondly, when we go from what we'll call the sales engineering or blueprinting scoping period and hand it off to a project manager, they have a very clear path to success for that client. And they can go back and speak to the engineer that scoped or the strategist that scoped. So it's not like, oh, here you go, good luck. But they have a blueprint that they can work from, that they can assign their timelines, their tasks, and most of that is really done in the scoping process to begin with. So we understand what level of labor is going to be needed, what the time frames on it are, what our expectations of the clients are, everything that you would normally imagine. And so in deciding that, we hand it to a project manager, and then that project manager becomes the primary contact for that relationship. There are exceptions to the rule that there are certain relationships that I'm the high-level contracting manager and relationship owner of certain relationships, but more often than not, it's their relationship, and that's been going great.
So I like it. So basically, it comes in, it gets scoped out by a team, and that and then it gets passed on to a team for execution. But the team that scoped it out will always be there to support the team to make sure that they're delivering according to the expectations of the client.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I need to ask you a question. When is the next time you're going fishing?
That's a great question. Maybe this weekend. See, it's summer here in Georgia, and so I have fishing 20 feet from me right here. So I live on a river, and there's trout that live here. And so it's very easy to get out and fly fish at my house. But in the summer, the water temperature gets above 70, so I catch and release trout here. And so it's unhealthy to catch them or they'll die. So even if I catch and release them at temperatures above 70 degrees, within 30 minutes, they'll be belly up from lactic acid and different things that occur in their bodies. So I don't fish as much in the summer unless I'm heading to the beach or I'm traveling somewhere. But I was just up in Detroit a couple of weeks ago and went out on a boat up there and caught a nice northern pike on the fly to everyone's amazement and set it free. So that's and I'm always fishing, or I'm always thinking about fishing anyway. The other thing I'm doing all the time, the big, as far as caring for myself, is I'm reading every day. I read probably, depending on how big the book or whatever, I read a book about once a week, or finish a book every week or every other week. And also daily meditation. I feel that for maintaining my sanity as a business owner and keeping my mind clear and calm and not filled with all the intellectual noise that my brain can generate, if I calm it twice a day, it really keeps me on an even keel and keeps me more focused and intentional.
Beautiful, beautiful. Where could people find out more about you, about the company Getwired? What is the best contact info?
Well, www.getwired, G-E-T, the letter U, W-I-R-E-D.com is our main website. And I'm rebuilding it right now. So within a month or so, you should see a new website appearing. On a personal note, if people want to see me in all my fly fishing glory, I am at Dobbin, at Dobbin on Instagram. So there's a lot of fly fishing pictures and things there. And I'm very easy to get a hold of. If anybody has any questions about our culture or how I run things, I'm very open to sharing that information. I'm Dobbin Buck, and I'm the only Dobbin Buck that I know of in the world, so I'm real easy to find on social media, or just look me up on Google and you'll be able to find me in about 3 minutes.
Beautiful. For the links to resources mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes at www.ptxgroup.com/podcast. And for our listeners that are listening to this via audio, we redid our website recently, a couple of months ago. And now if you go to ptxgroup.com/podcast, you could see the video version, you could see the audio version, you could see the transcript, you could see the practical pointers, all the links to that was mentioned in this episode. So a lot of good resources on every episode. So if you have not checked out our website, please do so at ptxgroup.com/podcast. Let's close with the 4 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Oh boy, here we go. Okay.
Number 1 is the easy one. A book that changed your life.
A book that changed my life. This last year, a book that I've given a lot of credit to, and I'm going to give it to again, is Rick Rubin's new book about creativity. I forget the exact name of it, but it opened up a lot of thought processes for me, and I've been really captivated by him and his thought process. It's not really what people consider a business book, but it had a big impact on me over the last year at the way I look at things.
Number 2, a piece of advice that you got that you'll never forget.
Don't take yourself so seriously is a real good piece of advice. I take what I do seriously, and I'm intentional with the things that I do, but keeping myself right-sized and really trying to be as peaceful and still as possible throughout this journey has been one of the greatest gifts I've received.
Beautiful. Number 3, anything you wish you could go back and do differently?
No, nothing, because every terrible thing that I've gone through, every mistake that I've made has led me to where I am today, and I wouldn't want to risk not having the valuable people and the things that I have in my life today. I wouldn't change a thing,
Beautiful. And last and final question, what's still on your bucket list to achieve?
2 months in Japan, fly fishing, meditating, and absorbing the Japanese culture is a real bucket list item for me that I am planning out, and I'm very excited about within the next 2 years.
Dobbin, thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is valuable. That is why, in the name of our listeners, we'll forever be grateful for sharing some of your time with us today. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much, Vanny. Always a pleasure. Appreciate you.
That's my conversation with Dobbin Buck. My takeaway from this one, number one, effective leadership requires balancing humility and accountability. Leaders should recognize that they don't have all the answers and must rely on their team's experience while maintaining clear metrics and goals to ensure everyone stays aligned and productive. Number two, transitioning to a fully remote work environment can be challenging, but managing with enhanced communication strategies will help. Regular morning meetings, mentorship programs, and team building events can help maintain a strong company culture even when working remotely. Number three, regular and transparent communication is key to synchronizing vision and operations within a company. Weekly and daily meetings to discuss goals, performance, and potential optimization help keep everyone on the same page and moving towards a common objective. And number four, deep relationships within teams are fundamental to a thriving company culture. Investing in team building activities and events fosters connectivity and collaboration, crucial for cohesive and motivated workforce. Last, number five, training empowering middle management to become optimizers within the company is critical. That will help you make sure that you're optimizing your team's performance and at the same time improving your bottom line. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Let's Look Business podcast. I hope you enjoyed the practical, no-nonsense advice that our guest shared. If you found value in listening, I would be so grateful if you could share the episode with your friends, and if you could give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever platform you listen. Subscribe to the show and get notified every time we publish a new episode. The Let's Look Business podcast is a PTEX Group original production. Until next time, make it a great day.